Recording. Good afternoon, Sundance owners. Rick Singh here. Many of you have not met me before, but we happen to be down on the houseboat. I'm here to give you just a real quick orientation on the new power plant. We've been down here since Thursday. Got to the marina and they were able to get the boat into the water, and we did a test run on Saturday for about 2 hours. So we're pretty confident. It does need some more work, but we're confident the package is together and is operational. We should be ready to go here in a couple weeks. What I want to do is take a couple moments here and go through the controls with you. So bear with me. It's relatively new to me as well, but I want to at least give everybody a slight introduction. So with that, we'll start here. The dash configuration is going to be just a little bit different. Our hopes is that we'll be back to a conventional dash in the coming weeks. We're going to have conventional gauges put in here. When Mercury designed this system, they have incorporated everything in the motors into the tachometer here. So you can mode through and see everything that you would normally find on your gauges, i.e. temperature, oil pressure, those kinds of things. So I would rather have a more conventional system, and they've agreed to do that. It will also save us from modifying this dash panel. So again, in the coming weeks, you'll see these gauges be placed back in here. Regardless, I'll leave the pamphlet here with an overview so you can get a little bit more detailed instructions if you choose as to how the modes work through the digital display as well. So when you get on the boat, it's not going to be any different than our old package. We'll have 2 ignition switches. You turn the motors on. The first thing you want to do is, obviously, it should be in a neutral position. And this, I'll preface it by saying this is before you do this, before you check, or not, excuse me, after you check the oil. We don't start the motors without checking the oil, and we'll cover that in another video. But as far as ignition switches, you turn them on. They power up just like the old ones did before. You can hear them make noise. The dash display over here will indicate neutral. It'll have a green light. And let me shut those down a little bit so they don't make noise. It'll have green light, indicates neutral. It's up on the top of the controls. This is all digital electronic. We'll talk about the features in a moment, but everything is very similar to the old system. You move forward, you come out of the staged position into neutral. As you go down, you'll feel engaged into drive. It's an actual detent, and then from there down, it'll start to accelerate. It seems to have a little bit longer throw than our old one, but it is very smooth and easy to feel. You won't have any problems as far as that point goes. I do want to admonish everyone. This is very important. These things are very sensitive to torque. So when you're engaging the drives, the acceleration should be very slow. Again, these are torquey. We don't want to tear up these outdrives. If you take off with a boat this heavy and over accelerate, it's extremely hard on the outdrives. So with that said, you gradually accelerate and you'll go to the same cruising speed we did before. 2200 for those that want the best fuel efficiency. 2200 on the tack is where you'll get your ideal fuel economy. We will never be running these beyond 3000. Do they have the capability of doing it? Absolutely. But if we want the motors to last, 3,000 RPM is where we land. 28 to 3,000 is ideal. Any questions there, you can call me, but that's pretty straightforward. It doesn't change a lot from what we were doing before. Back to the display here as far as the controls. There's several buttons up on the controller. The first one's in the front. If you can come around the front for me, Brad. This is what used to be our old tilt and trim that was on the side. Individually, they can be controlled right here. This is down and this is up. And that's for the port engine, starboard, down, and up. Once you get them in position, and ideally they should be down all the way. If for some reason the boat's listing and you have to make an adjustment and you pull one motor up, you can move to this tilt and trim button, which controls both motors. So these are adjusted individually. These are adjusted together. So as an example, you're underway. You've lowered both outdrives. You're underway, and you're having a need to trim out the motors. It's just too much load on the motors. You can go up. As a rule of thumb, You can go up until you watch the tachometers stop moving. As you trim the motors up, it brings the bow out of the water. It gives a lot less restriction or drag on the vessel in the water, so consequently the RPMs increase. As you see them increase and stabilize, don't go up any further. In fact, you want to just adjust them down slightly, and that's your optimal position to travel in. So if you have a long way to go up lake, if you do that process, you're going to be as efficient as you can be in the water. If you get into rough water and you start, hammering up and down with the hull, you can lower these down. The deeper you take the outdrives, the more stable the boat's going to be in the water. There is more drag, less fuel economy, but sometimes you don't have a choice. If it's rough water, you want to keep them as deep down as low as possible to keep the bow in the water. So back to the controller. This, like I said, is a tilt and trim, up or down. It moves both outdrives simultaneously. If you want to move them individual back, again, it's in the front. For the button display here, behind the throttles, you've got a sync button, a transfer button, a one lever button, a throttle only button, a dock button, and then a plus or a minus with a star. So in the beginning, we'll start with the sync button. This syncs both motors together. So if you hit sync when the key's on, one second here. When you hit sync, that means you can run one lever and it will adjust the RPM for both motors at the same time. So you don't have to worry about keeping them level. It's annoying. You don't have to keep them, ideally perfectly level to get the right RPM. If you bring up into neutral and you push down sync, you can push them both forward, but it's only going to be actually operated off of the left handle, and that will run all your throttle. You don't even have to worry about this one. But if you bring them out together, it's this one that's going to matter if they're synced together. If not, then you're going to have to adjust them accordingly. Now, sync works fine until you're 10% out of range of the other throttle, and then it'll disengage itself automatically. And that would be in a situation where you're trying to move the boat and maneuver it by rotating it, where you'd move one drive forward and the other in reverse, again very gently, and you can rotate the boat. In this case here, you'd rotate it to the left. If you reverse them and go this, you're going to rotate to the right. Okay, so you got one engine going in one direction, the other going in reverse. It will literally pivot you in a rotational position without moving forward or back. I'm sure most everybody knows that, but I'll share that with those that don't. So again, that was our sync button. It runs off of one throttle. If you want to unsync it, then you just have to make sure that the throttles go forward and stay pretty close together. You can check that by your tachometer and keep those RPMs pretty much the same. Okay, and I didn't mention earlier, reverse obviously is the same way. You can feel the first detent, and then the further back you go is when it engages the RPM, and that's your throttle. So the other two buttons here, you've got lever one. It's the same thing. It will operate off of this first lever only. Throttle only means that it's going to be in a neutral position. You can move the levers forward. It will not engage the outdrives. You can just rev the engine. So if they're cold, you need to warm them up, or you're having a problem starting one motor and you just want to bring it up and manually idle it faster, you can do that. And as long as that light's lit up, you're going to have a throttle only. Take it out of throttle only, you got to hit it a second time and disengages it. Dock is something that is not functional on this control system. Dock is a feature that Mercury has that allows you to go into a joystick. You'd push dock and use a joystick to basically maneuver the boat around. We don't have that feature, so that button's of no value. Beyond that, there's a plus and a minus, and to be honest with you, I don't know what that is yet. I've not gotten that far into it myself. So that's it in a nutshell. It's pretty straightforward. The directions are going to be here. I'm going to leave the manual. There's two manuals here, but you'll have a Mercury manual that'll stay in the boat. It'll be underneath the cabinet where the stereo system is and available for everybody to review. There is a kill switch on here, which is now mandatory. It's the same type of switch that you would find on your boat or your jet skis. There's a toggle that will supposedly supposed to be attached to it. I don't know that will keep it on there, but so it would actually have a lanyard and disengage the motors and kill them if there was some emergency. These shut-off engines will not be operational after we're done. Those are of no value. It'll have to be in this individual switch only. It's just the way the electronics are set up. Okay, that's going to be it for this video. We'll have a couple more to cover some of the other features. Thank you.